At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
I'm Sam Abuel-Samad.
And I'm Rebecca Lindland. So
welcome to episode 104. We're going to talk about the cars we're driving first, and we've got a BMW X4, a Toyota Tundra Pro 4X, and a double shot of the Buick Regal Tour X and the Mazda 3 that you're driving, Rebecca. So let's get into that before we also cover the Ford Escape and the Audi e-tron and some other stuff, maybe, if we can stay off a tangent. But, I think the Regal is probably a good starting point because that's a car that you're not going to see a lot of.
Which is really unfortunate.
It is. It's incredibly unfortunate. So years ago, I actually drove the Opel version on the Nürburgring, which was incredibly fun to drive.
Was that in 2010 on the Regal World Tour? You were on that.
Yes.
With me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We actually drove the original US spec versions.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah.
But it was an Opel, though.
No, they were actually Buick. They were early production Buicks, that hadn't been shipped over yet. We did the taxi ride in the Opel GS.
Oh, okay.
In the Insignia GS, but the ones that we drove were actually the Regal. They were US spec Regals.
Yeah, the Regal that was supposed to be the Aura, right?
Yes, I think it probably was.
That was a surprisingly good car. That first generation Regal. It was kind of a cast off. It wasn't supposed to be a Buick, and it kind of wasn't really supposed to be here. But they had done enough work to get it here. You're just like, yeah, just give it to Buick. Yeah. I really liked that first generation. I haven't had a chance to drive the new Regal, but from what it sounds like, it's a decent looking car. It's nicely equipped, and it's a hatchback. It's basically the closest thing you can get to a Saab 900.
Well, Rebecca, didn't you have the Tour X?
I did have the Tour X.
So you had the wagon.
I drove that a number of months ago. I went on the media drive for that. This was the sedan, but that's a Sportback. Okay. It's the Sportback version. So it's a hatchback, which is fantastic. And I got to tell you, this thing was such a head turner. So I drove it from Connecticut down to Washington, D.C. to go to the Elite Eight games on Sunday night, which was tons of fun. I'd never been to any of the NCAA tournament games before. And so it was a lot of fun to go.
Were you happy or sad that Duke lost? Because it seemed like Twitter was very happy.
So I was a little agnostic. I have my nephew's maternal grandmother is tied into Duke University. So, but even he was kind of agnostic. I would not have been unhappy if Duke had won, but it didn't ruin our evening. So it was just fun to go. And of course, for the Spartan fans and friends that I have, I was thrilled for them. It was an incredible game. It was a 1-point game and countless lead changes. And so anyway, so it was a lot of fun. But so Jake is 24. And we got him approved to drive the vehicle as well because it was over 5-hour drive. So I wanted to share the driving. But what was really interesting to me was he just loved it. He absolutely loved driving a sedan. And, it's interesting because kids his age, they've grown up with SUVs and crossovers. It's really almost all they've known in some cases. And, they learn how to drive on an SUV because it's quote unquote safer for them. And, it's usually their first car. His first car, he actually had a BMW, a used BMW, but then he had a Ford Edge for a number of years. And the idea of driving a sedan for this kid was so delightful. He loved it. And that was just so interesting because, we talk about so much of the time the sedan is dead. And yet, seeing he said flat out, he goes, this makes me think about getting a Buick Regal. And, when you look at some of the used car prices on this. So this one was the GS all-wheel drive. It's got a 3.6 liter V6. Really like just absolutely, I think it has just about everything.
Yeah, well, the GS is a little sporty-ish.
Right. The GS is sporty-ish. And so this one tops out at $43,000, and that's with destination, with a 925 destination. And, it had the massaging seats, the heated and cooled seats, all of the driver assist systems. I will say that Waze worked almost perfectly with the Android Auto. And then we switched over to Apple CarPlay because he has an Apple phone, an iPhone. And so we were able to try both of those systems out, and both of them worked really, really well. So overall, we really thoroughly enjoyed it. He drove most of the way down there, and then I drove the whole way back. And even after, a 5-hour drive slogging through New York City traffic at rush hour and such, I felt pretty good. It was comfortable and fun to drive. But again, that, having a young person that so enjoyed the sedan was really one of the key things that I came away with.
Well, so there's hope yet for those of us who are still clinging to our sedans and hatchbacks, especially. I think too, the idea that an SUV is safer for a new driver is a little bit
nonsense.
Yeah, it's a big vehicle. It's heavy. When you get them out of shape, they're hard to control. They're hard to recover. At least a smaller, lighter car is a little easier to. It's harder to lose control in the first place because it has the advantage of the lower center of gravity, but also it's easier to get it sort of back into shape. Sort of all things relative, at the end of the day, a new driver should not be driving in a way that gets them out of control in the first place.
Right.
That's generally the first thing we do as new drivers. So, but yeah, SUVs it's sort of the same myth as like, oh, you want one of those big old cars. It's like, yeah, like the 59 Impala that just folds up. No thanks.
But yeah, it was just, and again, with the, first of all, we pulled up to the hotel and the people were like, what is this? And we were
just like the ad. Excellent.
Like the ad. It was hysterical. We were all laughing so hard about it because they were like, that's a Buick? And they were like, oh my gosh, I'm in an ad. So yes, it was really, really funny because it was just like the ads. And even on the highway, just watching people turn to look at it, it was bright red, which helped too. But but it's just a sharp looking car. And as you mentioned, Sam, you just don't see a lot of them, which is a shame because it's it's just a well put together vehicle. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had the Tour X back in December when and it happened to coincide with when my wife and I drove across the state to go pick up our puppy,
Daisy.
And it's a great car for being in spending several hours in it, driving long distances, and also just for driving around town. I really like that car a lot. And, it's just a shame that it doesn't get more attention. It doesn't seem like Buick, really puts many ad dollars behind it. It doesn't seem to get much marketing. And, I rarely ever see them around, especially the Tour X, And I think, when they launched this new Regal, I think that part of why they took the approach they did with the Tour X, with doing that more crossover-y style thing, raising it up an inch and putting the black wheel arch extensions on there was to try to cash in on the crossover thing. They were hoping that, that would grow overall sales of the Regal lineup. And unfortunately, it hasn't really had much impact. If at best, it's maybe slowed down the decline of sedans for Buick. And I suspect that we're not going to have the Regal here in the U.S. for much longer. Because this generation of Regals are built in Germany by Opel. And, of course, GM sold off Opel to PSA, but part of that deal was that they would continue to supply the Regal for a while. But I'm guessing that, probably within the next year or two, this vehicle is going to go away from the U.S. Buick lineup because they only sold about 15,000 last year.
Yeah, well, maybe that's really part of the reason why they're not working too hard to make it much more popular, especially if there's a way for them to sort of divest the model and not have to eat it on the plant and the labor that's building it right now. That's kind of PSA's problem.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see, if used values change at all with this.
No, they're going to drop like a stone.
But it's just, that the Regal Tour X, I agree, Sam. It's such a fantastic vehicle. It's so underrated, and it's really a shame that people don't appreciate them more. But again, if we can get 20-somethings to start buying, used Regals, be fun to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Buick is going to have that problem anyway. Even if they stay here, the cars aren't going to hang on to their their resale. I think that's just the nature of the beast. With that brand, with any sort of domestic brand, the only thing that really maintains its value is a Wrangler.
Pretty much.
Plummets.
But you know what? Again, the thing is that I think that for some, I had one of my, again, a young woman, I think she just turned 30, and she was like, "What car do you have?" And I said, "Well, I have a Buick Encore as my, kind of daily driver, even though I don't drive her very much." And she got one. She had no problem with the Buick name.
Oh no, and that's a really good car. It's a small little crossover. It's great for in town. It can do highway, and it's comfortable there too. There's a lot of reasons why, if you're not interested in the brand or you don't have a history with it or an opinion, that's going to be a nice car. Everything Buick makes is like that. They're all pretty well appointed. They're nice to be in. They're nice to drive. And they are a good value, even new. So
yeah, I would like to really see them evolve their marketing beyond the apologist kind of thing. Even the new Buick Envision ad that they're running now. I think it's primarily running on the NCAA because they're the official sponsor.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they're the official sponsor of the tournament. And it's a very cute ad. And it's just, it shows a little kid and his mom showing him the car and stuff and, and the usefulness of it. And it was interesting that it's the Envision coming from China because, of course, they've had some tariff concerns there as well. But I like the fact that they're moving beyond the it's a Buick kind of thing, this is a great car and look how nice it is. And
there's plenty of unrealized potential in the Buick lineup and the brand. So hopefully they can work on that.
Yeah, I hope they can. I do. I hope they can.
So, all right. Well, also you had the Mazda 3. Do we want to talk briefly about that? You didn't put too many miles on it.
I'll talk briefly about it. I didn't put as many miles on it as I had expected to. I ended up being on a trip and then going down to DC. But I've got the 2019 Mazda 3. It's the traditional 4-door sedan. It's got, I'm sorry, the writing on the Mulroney is so small. It's like, people, what are you doing to us? I think I had told you it has the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine. And, this is a really, really well-equipped vehicle. It is $27,990, including... Well,
there's nothing left to add to it then, right?
There is. So there's a...
What?
No, I'm sorry. That's fully equipped.
Oh,
yeah.
Does that have the all-wheel drive?
Oh, does the Mazda 3 come in all-wheel drive?
The new one, it does offer all-wheel drive, yeah.
This is not that I can see.
Is it 19 or 20 that offers all-wheel drive?
The 20s.
Oh, okay. This is the 19.
So you still have the old one, not the new one.
Yeah, so it's the 2019. It only has 2,000 miles on it, though.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, the new one is labeled as a 2019. I thought they were doing it as a 2020 model, but it is a 19.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Huh. It's $27,000 is all the money for for a 3 sedan.
But they are really nice, though.
Yeah, they are really nice. But it's weird because, first of all, I know we've talked a little bit about entertainment systems. I cannot get this thing to do anything.
Oh, you didn't like it? It has that control knob, right? Almost like iDrive, like iDrive Lite.
It didn't understand when I wanted it to to change the radio station. So I couldn't get it to change to XM80, for instance. It finally started to understand, even though it was on XM, I couldn't get it, or Sirius XM, I couldn't get it to change the station verbally. And I certainly couldn't figure out how to do it manually. And then
you should be able to just twist the knob on the console. So you can, that controller on the console, you can push it like a joystick to go up or down or left or right, and then you can also twist it to scroll through menus, and then push it down to select.
Yes, so I've done some of that. It won't let me unselect things that I can tell. At least it keeps going to favorites, and the favorites are all the heavy metal and hair bands.
So you're very familiar with the back catalog of Slayer.
I don't know who the heck had this vehicle before me in the press fleet, but we have different types of music selection.
Yeah, every week I get in the car and it's on. It's either AM, local AM,
right,
or it is Fox News. Okay. And I'm like, okay, awesome. Clearly you are entertained by something different when I.
So I was very disappointed just at the difficulty that I was having with the HMI. I did get Android Auto to work very well today, and the Waze worked very, very well. So that was good. I think, it's nice again that it has heated seats. It has nice appointments to it. But again, it's $27,000.
But does it feel like it's worth $27,000, or does it feel like it's equipped that way? Like it looks in pictures, it looks really nicely appointed. It has like the leather portion there on the dash, or whatever it is, Naugahyde or whatever. But it's it looks upscale. In pictures, does it feel upscale?
It does. And it feels upscale. It drives very nicely. It's small, but again, I just, and I know we talked about the Mazda CX-5 being a high price point. And I think this is a high price point.
Well, this is part of Mazda's strategy is to try to move more upscale, to be, to have a more premium feel to their cars. And I guess, obviously the market is not accustomed to that from Mazda, but, set aside the Mazda brand name on it. Just take it for the characteristics it has. Well, do you think it's worth the price?
I still think it's a lot of money for the size of vehicle.
Sure,
for that size. It also didn't have I was trying to park it, and it didn't have me. I'm sorry. I'm so drugged up after my oral surgery today on my mouth.
Like the auto park, self-parking kind of stuff, right?
Well, no, not even that. It's just the sensors.
Really?
To alert me to an object. So it was kind of funny. It was one of those times when I was like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody saw that. I couldn't park. I came in at the wrong angle of approach.
Yeah.
So I had to back up 4 times. But it didn't have any of the sensors that I would have expected of a vehicle in today's world to have. Just the alerts were not there. So
maybe your heavy metal friend disabled.
Well, that's what I actually went through. I actually went through each screen to reset everything because I was trying to get them back to factory things. And I'm sitting there in the parking lot just trying to work through all of the menus. But I think it's as you said, it's a really nice looking vehicle. The leather is beautiful. The interior is beautiful. They've done a nice job with some of that. I am not a fan of the entertainment system at all. But there are things that are very good about it.
Yeah, I think that's a criticism I've heard about Mazdas before. People either like it, or the infotainment in particular, or they really, really dislike it.
Yeah, the engine's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a zippy, fun car. So, I driving home on Friday night, through New York City traffic, it was great. I mean, there was nice acceleration with it. It didn't hesitate. There were things that I really liked about driving it itself that were fun to drive. So I think I love this Skyactiv technology a lot, and it's got 188 or 86 horsepower, which is a great amount of horsepower for a car that size. So I think that there's things that are really, really good about it, and I really liked it a lot. But I wasn't thrilled with the HMI, and I'm getting pretty good fuel economy with it too. So it's rated for 30 miles per gallon. I think I'm right in that range.
Yeah, it's 36 on the highway, which I'm impressed by. I think, Sam, you're right on the money with the idea of take the badge away. And
yeah, I mean, if this was badged as an Audi, say this was badged as an Audi A3 or a Mercedes A-Class or, a BMW 1 Series, would you still think that price was too high for what you get?
No, any of those models in the below the 30s is a deal.
Right. And if you compare kind of the fit and finish and the materials and the design and the layout and everything to any of those traditional premium brands, I think this thing stands up quite well. I think it's just a question of, getting used to the idea that Mazda is, maybe not quite a premium brand, but certainly not, one of the traditional mainstream brands anymore.
Well, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that I can't say that I feel that way so much about the dash. I definitely feel that way about the leather and the seating, though. I think the seating's really, really nice on it. And the styling is really sharp on it, too. The color is beautiful. It's a really rich, deep color. It's a red as well, as the Regal was. But it's a really beautiful color. So I think the styling, I think to your point, Sam, the styling is great on it. And their choices of materials are really nice. I'm not totally enamored with the dashboard, but I think it's a nice, and again, it's really fun to drive.
Yeah, and I can see it's kind of an experiment for Mazda to push their brand perception up like that. And again, it's you can get a Mazda 3 for $21,000 or $22,000, so you don't have to spend $28,000. It's just
that, and even at that at that lower price point, it's still really nicely finished.
Yeah, and we as a consumer, the American auto buyer tends to equate size with price. So it is weird for a lot of us to be spending big car money on a small car, even if it's fully equipped and really nice. And there's only a few cars that get away with it. For example, Mini. You can drive a Mini price up there.
Right, for sure.
And but for that, the small thing is the thing, and they've been very studious about branding it and making it the small premium car. Mazda has a ways to go with shifting the perception to say, they're not just your normal Toyota or Nissan competitor, or Hyundai, Kia now even too. They're a different thing, and they're working on staking out some territory, I think.
They are. So just to clarify, this was it's the Mazda 3 sedan. It's front wheel drive with the premium package. Is specifically what the one that I have, and so
the all-wheel drive is an extra $1,400.
Okay, Woo. So then that would then you're putting it, almost at 30, but it does. I mean, it is really, really nicely equipped, and so. You are getting a lot for your money in terms of features and content. So it has, it has the cross traffic alert system. It does have radar. It has cruise control with stop and go. So it has some very, very nice features in it, and rain sensing windshield wipers, which are great. So there's things that are really, really good about it.
I enjoy driving Mazda, so I hope that I get a chance to drive the new 3. It hasn't wound its way up in my fleet yet, but maybe Bugsy's sitting on one. Who knows? So Sam, speaking of expensive and small-ish, you had the 2019 BMW X4.
Yeah, so
which is not exactly small.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of the middle-sized SUV from BMW. BMW was the first to they started this whole crossover SUV coupe thing back 2008 or so with the original X6, and
which is
we're under
obscene.
the third generation now. Yeah, I mean,
I do still love those.
Really, you like?
I've always been conflicted about the X6 because it's a vehicle that has no right to drive as well as it does, but just the whole premise of it just seemed ridiculous to me.
Oh, it's absurd.
Yeah.
I did like driving it. especially
the X6M.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too, because that shape is that big hulking shape. It's not just BMW anymore. It's Mercedes is doing it as well.
Yeah, everybody's got them. And Audi's bringing them out, and
right.
And you're going to see even more of them coming. The Ford's new electric crossover that's coming next year. Has the same kind of profile. So this is not unique, but what's interesting is when you look at the X4, the X4 is based on the X3, but with a fastback roofline. But when you look at it in profile, compared to the X6, the X6 roofline, kind of slopes down even more sharply at the back. And I haven't been in a current generation X6, but I remember back, to when I went on the media drive for the original X6. And getting into the back seat of that thing, this was a big vehicle, and I'm like 5'10", 5'11", and my head was touching the ceiling in the back seat. It did not have enough headroom in the back. This X4 that is actually significantly smaller than that is better packaged than that original X6 was, because when you look at it in profile, there's actually the roof line is actually a little bit flatter, and then kind of it slopes down a little bit, but then really drops off behind the second row seats. So it's got almost a little bit of a hump there. Not quite like first generation Porsche Panamera,
right?
But there's enough of a hump there that you have decent headroom and leg room in the back seat. So it's actually fairly usable. And the one I had was the xDrive 30i in BMW's ridiculous nomenclature.
So that's what is that, like a 1 liter 3-cylinder turbo?
No. So the xDrive is all wheel drive versus S-Drive is rear wheel drive or 2-wheel drive, and the X4 is standard with all wheel drive, and the 30i in this case is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo with like 250 horsepower. And it's a great engine. I've liked this engine in all of the applications I've driven it in. In the 3 Series and in the even in the hybrid plug-in hybrid 5 Series and 7 Series. They use the same engine in there, and it's a surprisingly strong engine, and it feels more powerful than the numbers indicate. It's got really good low end torque, so performance is not an issue with this thing. Kind of the packaging, is obviously not as optimal as an X3. If you're going to carry bigger cargo in the back, I think on a regular basis, then you probably want to go with the X3 as opposed to this thing. But it's not bad. So this is more like probably the closest description I could come up with for this is that it's kind of like a jacked up 3 Series Gran Turismo.
Yeah, I'm surprised how well the styling works on the X4 because I think it works actually better at that scale than it does at the larger scale, the X6. But does it make the basically the 3 Series or the X3 kind of hardware more useful or less useful, or do you not really notice? Because the X3 is pretty roomy for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, from a driving dynamics standpoint, there's not really much to choose between the two. I mean, they're essentially the same. You're going to lose some cargo space in the back. So if you're gonna go, collecting antiques at estate sales on the weekend, on a regular basis, you're probably better off with the X3.
It's kind of a morbid hobby. Sorry, carry on.
If you want to haul big stuff, you're better off with the X3 because you do lose a fair bit of cargo space, for taller stuff in the back with this one. But aside from that, it basically comes down to whatever your taste is, whatever style you prefer. If you like the more traditional wagon style of the X3, or this sort of coupish profile of the X4.
So this is the reason why I love the X6. I love the Mercedes GLC and GLE SUV coupes because they just radiate, I don't have children.
That is okay. Very good point.
And is that something that you're looking to throw off, or that you look for in other people, or what's the
both?
Okay.
I had an X3, I had an X5, which was ridiculous because it was way too big for me. But there's just something that is just badass about a big hulking. I mean, I remember the very first time I ever saw the X6, I was in Munich, and it pulled out from, behind the locked, closed gates that nothing is allowed to be pulled out from out. And it came out and I just went, oh my gosh, that thing is awesome. It's just big and impractical, and it just has a hockey butt. What can I say?
Okay. All right.
It's so from my standpoint, I look at those types of body styles and just think how it reflects a single person's lifestyle or child-free lifestyle. Because,
although you don't lose any back seat room in this one relative to the X3. So if you've got 1 or 2 kids to throw in the back,
sure,
you can still do that with this one.
You can
and I
still
think
do that.
with the X4, you're probably more likely to be a buyer with a family versus the X6 may. I don't know. I guess I've seen that as sort of the family BMW coupe for rich people as well, who pronounce it coupe.
Well, it was funny because I had the X4 back in the fall, and somebody said to me, "You know what? That's such a great nanny's car because they can pick the kids up in the backs they can pick the kids up from the school, and it still looks cool and it's still fun to drive and stuff." And so, that was kind of just one Greenwich residence.
That has to be the strangest conversation. Somebody said it to me, I'd be like,
we live in very different environments.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
Nobody would call it a nanny's car.
I don't even know anybody that has a nanny.
I have friends who have multiples, one for each kid.
My goodness, one for each kid. That's great. If you're going to have children, one of the things you might want to try is actually raising them.
Yeah. No, you definitely don't want to do that.
I mean, they do enough on their own. They certainly they learn how to resist pretty early. I mean, it becomes a struggle.
But anyway, so no, I liked the X4 a lot. I love that size. It's a great urban car as well.
Yeah. I think that's
it is a reasonable size. It's not too ridiculously large, and I agree with you, Dan. I think the proportions work better on this than they do on the X6.
I do think so. That is, Rebecca raises a really good point, especially if you're, say, in Greenwich and you commute to the city. I don't want to park an X6 in any Manhattan garage. It's just big. They have a crappy turning radius. They're impossible to see out of. An X4 is a little bit more wieldy.
That is the one other real downside of the X4 is visibility straight out the back is atrocious. I mean, even if you were to fold down the back seats so you didn't have the headrests in the way, or just take out the rear headrests, you still have just a tiny little slot to see through looking straight out the back. So you do have really terrible rearward visibility, which is made worse by the headrests on the back seat.
That's on brand for BMW.
But,
yes,
yeah.
that is
well, I mean, that's unfortunately an issue with way too many vehicles these days. Not just, it's not just BMW. And of course, the thing's not inexpensive either. I mean, it's like $54,000, and this one was not even particularly well equipped. It didn't have any of the driver assist features in it. It did have the nice leather interior, but the red leather interior. But aside from that, it didn't really have much, other than the standard equipment that comes on the X4.
Sam, were you able to put the headrest down automatically?
Not in the one that I had, no.
Okay, because I will say in the Volvo that I had last week, I was able to do that, and that was a really, really nice feature. Just the one button, I loved that.
I used to love that. Yeah. We had that in our S60s, and you'd press the button, the solenoid would drop, and you could smack people in the back of the head with the rear seat, because they understand that their head restraints are large in the cars, and especially for the early S60s, they did impede rearward visibility. So if you didn't have people in those positions, you press the button and you get they drop, and you get a much clearer view out of the rear window. That was one of the things that Volvo does, a lot of subtle stuff like that. That's just yes, it's there for safety, for a safety aid, for a driver aid, and that's a great sort of it's a passive system,
right,
or a passive idea. But I think it's lovely thinking.
I agree.
So I'll stop ranting about it now. So it's like that was so. The X4 doesn't strike me as a whole lot of car for $55,000, especially if it's not fully equipped. I was driving the I'm trying to look for the year. I'll say 2019. Toyota Tundra TRD Pro Crew Max. I think that's all the words. Which was also $55,000. And, we're in a very strange time where a $55,000 truck, I look at it and go, yeah, it's not the most expensive truck I've driven.
That's a bargain.
Yeah, it's not fully equipped either. But and it's the Tundra, so it's kind of like in 2007 they decided to make a truck from 1995, and it's still, so it feels old, and then it's been kind of dressed up. It feels kind of like an antique truck.
They did a mid-cycle refresh a few years ago, but I mean, this is basically the same truck they introduced in 2008.
Yeah, but it's tough. It's tough to keep up with the truck market if you only want to sell a couple 100,000, which is, I think, I don't know exactly how many, but
the Tundra is about 100,000 a year.
Okay. So they must sell 200, 250 of the Tacoma. I think we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, it's close. It's around 200, I think, Tacomas.
Yeah. So they're not a big player in trucks in either of their sort of niches. The Tacoma is healthy for a variety of reasons for them. But the Tundra is not really a big full-size truck nameplate. On the other hand, it's not a bad truck. It's just, I can understand Toyota saying, we made a truck that was it hit all of our objectives. It hits the mark. It still does all the truck stuff. Yes, it lags the competition, but our buyers like it enough to come back anyway, and we sell the amount that we make. I don't know that it's actually a problem, that it feels like kind of an antique, and not necessarily in a bad way, but I don't think the materials are that great. I can see plastic flash, casting flash on some of the, or not casting flash, but there's a mold line on some of the trim, and the materials are hard and they don't feel good to the touch. But there's other aspects that I really like about it. The Tundra feels like they really looked at the fundamentals of making a pickup. They did that studious Toyota thing. So the door handles are really chunky. you can open them when you're wearing, thick winter gloves or work gloves or something. The HVAC controls are the same way. They're big knobs that you can manipulate. There's space between them, and so you can use them without having, sort of dainty little fingers. It's good that way. It seems like, yeah, it's a truck, and even their infotainment, which is not good, but there's a lot of space between the buttons, the actual hard buttons on that flank the screen. So all of that stuff is pretty good. In the Pro 4X, the seats are really comfortable. It's not as quiet as the Raptor that I was in. I mean, that's the thing with Ford. They figured out how to soundproof their cars and trucks, and they are so quiet, like luxuriously quiet. And that makes them feel very premium too, because they go down the road in a very sort of silent manner. You only hear what they want you to hear. And here in the Tundra, especially in Pro 4X trim, it's a little loud. It's got the look at me exhaust on it, so it rumbles a lot, and it sounds great, but it's, there are times where I'm just like, I really don't need this loud exhaust on this truck, but okay. But
everybody needs a loud exhaust.
That is a great, it's a great sounding engine. I would love to hear an LS 500 sound that way, or LS 460 or whatever. I don't even know. It's LS 500 now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 500 now, but they don't have a V8 in it anymore. It's a twin turbo V6 now.
That's probably better, actually. Fits the character of the car.
But you can still get the V8 in the LC, and it is pretty glorious.
Yeah, I have no complaints about the engine or the transmission or any of the drivetrain. All of that stuff. Toyota does that really well, and I have no doubt that this truck will just be pretty reliable for a very long time. It certainly doesn't have the stout frame that a lot of the other pickups have, but it feels good going down the road. It doesn't really suffer for it. It probably trembles a little. If I were to drive it back to back with a Ram or an F-Series or whatever, I'm sure it feels a little bit more trembly like trucks used to. But it wasn't bad when it debuted, and it's still not bad, but it's not great. It feels really antique. It is ugly. Yeah. Especially as the Pro 4X, which just has we made this you got the asshole trim package on this. It's just and it's got weird running boards that actually kind of trip you up, because it's like a pipe and then there's a step welded to the pipe, and I'm stepping on the wrong part unless I really look at it. It's weird that's what happens, but $55,000 Tundra that's got, a towing package, 4-wheel drive. It has, nice cushy leather seats, and, it's a good place to spend time. It's the Crew Max. It's a big cab. It has, the Toyota way of just going down the road, which is okay. It doesn't seem to care. I wish it drove more like a TNGA car. Yeah. Everything with TNGA is good.
Or a Ram.
Yeah, if it drove like a Ram, it would be good. But it only has one zone for air conditioning. It's just there's that Entune system that's just not good. And I think some of it is just limited by the age of it now, where they can't really update the infotainment because there's a lot of other stuff that would have to be upgraded. The stuff you don't see to do that, and it doesn't really get great fuel economy. I'm looking at it now. The Monroney says 13 city, 17 highway for a grand total of 14 combined, and that's about what I'm getting. I'm getting 15.
Well, is there a redesign? I'm sorry. Is there a redesign in its near future? Hopefully.
I
mean, do we know of one?
I would assume that at some point in the next year or two, we'll probably see a redesigned Tundra, because, even I think it's been 5 years even since they did the major refresh, the mid-cycle refresh, and it's been 11 years now since it launched.
Yeah.
So if they want to continue to compete in this segment, they need to do something soon. But I was just going to say, the last time that I drove a Tundra about a year and a half ago, one thing about it that probably that bothered me more than anything was just the ride quality was really not good.
Okay. Well, was it like harsh or
no? It's an issue with there's a one particular stretch of road here which I've complained about on numerous occasions with certain other vehicles in the past. The stretch of I-94 east of where I live.
Aren't you going to be pissed when they fix it and you can no longer use it as an evaluation loop?
I live in Michigan, so I'm confident it'll be a good long time before that
You'll
gets
find
rebuilt.
others.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's fair. Fair point.
But yeah, I mean, it was one. It got into the same kind of pitching motion that some of the worst vehicles I've driven.
Oh, so it does that like oscillating thing over crappy pavement.
It oscillates up and down, and it's not good.
Yeah, I haven't really had the opportunity to get it out of sorts like that. So it rides like a truck. It was about the best I can say. It's not terrible. And I wonder maybe if the larger tires of the Pro 4X, it's like they tried to make a Raptor-ish truck. So I wonder if they've gone through and adjusted the suspension calibration a little bit, softened up the shocks a little bit or something like that, or if it just, I haven't found it as offensive. Like it's definitely not as good as any of the other trucks. I think, we're pretty aligned there where it's just, yeah, I mean, if you want a truck that's behind the times, but is also a Toyota, there's the Tundra. And I don't want to damn it with faint praise, but I do think it's way overdue for a refresh. I couldn't, in good conscience, spend my own $55,000 on it. I would take a chance on the Ram, or if reliability, which Ram is always sort of at the bottom of the rankings. If reliability was a concern, there's Ford and Chevy. So there's a lot of different choices before you get to Toyota. I think you have to be one of those motivated, loyal Toyota buyers to want this.
And there are a lot of those people. I mean, for all the complaining we've done about the Tundra, it has pretty consistently sold, in that 100, 110, 115,000 a year. So even as old as it is, it never reached the targets that Toyota had for it when they launched it. When this generation launched a decade ago, they were hoping to do 200,000, 250,000 a year, and it never got there. But it also has stayed pretty steady, and like every other truck brand, Tundra buyers are very loyal to their trucks. You don't generally get a whole lot of switching between brands in full-size trucks.
It's a really good lesson in how good is good enough, because trucks continue to just beat the hell out of each other with new features, new towing capacity, more horsepower, all that stuff. And you look at this truck and you go, okay, I don't like the interior materials. The ride is not great. It's ugly, but you fix those. Those aren't that tough to fix. Some of the stuff is just fine. Like the engine, which we all love the way it sounds. Well, it only makes it makes 381 horsepower and 401 pound-feet of torque. That's not that much when you're comparing it to the EcoBoost V6s or some of the V8s. And
well, I mean, it's in the same ballpark as the 3.5 EcoBoost.
Okay, I thought it was a little down, but it's
the regular one, not the high performance version.
Okay,
it's in the Raptor.
It's a 6-speed automatic where we've got 10 speeds now. But it's fine. I like that it actually has a electronic transfer case and limited slip differentials and all that. Like I think it has an auto mode. Like if you put it in four-wheel drive demand or something. So that's nice that it'll sort of automatically switch into 4-wheel drive when it detects slippage, I think. This one carries a tow package, and it's like you're not going to want for stuff here unless you go find the gimmicks at the other trucks. So it's kind of one of those like 6 to 1/2 dozen of the other things, right? Like if you want a Tundra, it's going to satisfy you. If you if you want a Ram, the Tundra's not going to satisfy you, but a Ram will. And, those buyers are loyal. So I don't know. I'm in kind of a conundrum. I don't want to say that it's the worst thing ever and I hated it, but it's definitely not the most competitive truck. Fair enough.
And that's a good way to put it.
All right. Well, let's move on then. I've babbled enough. And Sam, you were at the Ford Escape reveal this week, right?
Yeah, actually, it was last Thursday that they did a media backgrounder last Thursday, and then they publicly showed it on Tuesday of this week, so 2 days ago. And they did a global reveal with events here in Dearborn and also in Europe and in Asia, where the Escape is badged as the Kuga. So this is another fourth generation of Ford's compact crossover. It's the first North American application of Ford's new front drive unibody platform. So just a refresher, Ford's going to five platforms for all their vehicles going forward: a front drive unibody, rear drive unibody, which is for the Explorer and the Aviator,
and the Mustang,
and probably the Mustang, an electric platform, cargo vans, and body on frame pickup trucks. And so this is the same. This platform architecture is shared with the new Focus, which we're not getting now, but it is available in other parts of the world. And as Ford adds more crossover and SUV nameplates to its lineup, it's starting to each of the ones that are in the lineup, as they get redesigned, they're trying to get more focused with them, so to speak. Rather than trying to have, trying to cross over, a broader audience, they're trying to get more market focus with each one. And so the Escape this generation is becoming more of an urban utility vehicle. And then coming next year, they've got this new rugged compact crossover on the same platform, which is meant to compete, more with like Jeep, like with a Jeep Compass Trailhawk or a Cherokee Trailhawk, something like that. And so that's going to have a completely different design. It'll have, most of the same underpinnings, but completely different design, and it'll be more optimized for off-road use. And so, this one, the Escape, this is probably going to be the higher volume model, but it's now more targeted at urban dwellers, lifestyle buyers, which kind of is why the design has kind of gone in the direction that it has. And I think it's a really good design. It's funny, when I first saw it, the thing it reminded me of was the CX-5. And kind of the direction that Mazda has been going with their design, with the sculpting, fewer creases, a little more, rounded shape to it, a little more organic shape to it. And for this generation, they're bringing back the hybrid. The Escape hybrid was Ford's first hybrid vehicle back in 2004 when it launched. And for the previous generation, instead of doing an Escape hybrid, they did the C-Max, and well, we know how that turned out. But they've revamped their hybrid. They've got an updated fourth generation version of their hybrid system that's launching in this Escape. Plus, they're also going to have a plug-in hybrid version that's going to have 30 miles of electric driving range. And then there's also two gas engines for the North American market. A new 1.5 liter 3-cylinder. Which is already available overseas in the new Fiesta ST, which we also aren't getting, and then an updated version of the 2-liter EcoBoost as well. So four powertrains for North America, and I think one of the things that I really like about this design, and I was talking with Joel Piaskowski, who's the executive director of exterior design for crossovers and cars at Ford. And one of the things he pointed out was that they actually lowered the belt line quite a bit on this thing, and the pillars are slimmer than before because they're using more ultra high strength steel. So they made the pillars slimmer, and they lowered the belt line, which when you look at it, it's actually quite noticeable, and it gives you a lot better outward visibility from the vehicle.
I think it looks great. It's interesting. I first thought of the Kia Sportage. Right up against the 2019 specifically, the 2019 Kia Sportage, but then it bumped right up against the Mazda as well. So it looks like a combination of the two. The interior, it looks a little busy and almost confusing. The knobs, I don't know. I'm just staring at a picture, so I haven't seen it in person.
I think and it may be when you see it in person, it still feels busy, but compared to the outgoing Escape,
it's actually
it's
much cleaner than the. It's much cleaner than the current Escape.
I'm surprised at how much I dislike the current Escape. It's just.
I think. Well, I'm just looking at. I'm looking at the center stack. And the two buttons that are at the radio and then the control buttons. I guess I wish that there were more symmetry between them. But again, I'll be curious to see what it looks like in person.
Yeah.
I really liked it when I saw it, and I think it is a much better layout than before. And it's also roomier inside. Overall, it's about 2 inches longer than the previous one. But one of the things they've added is a sliding rear seat, which is something that the Chevy Equinox has had ever since the first generation version.
Oh yeah.
So it can move back and forth about 6 inches.
The Equinox.
And again, Joel, who's doing the design walk around, he climbed into the back seat. He's about 6'2", and he had plenty of spare room for his knees in the back seat and plenty of headroom. So it worked out quite well. I'm looking at the interior right now, and in terms of vertical symmetry, it doesn't have vertical symmetry, but it does have horizontal symmetry. So you've got there's basically 4 knobs on the center stack. The 2 smaller ones up above, just below the screen for the volume and tuning,
right?
And then 2 larger ones for climate control down below, and then some switches. So I think it's actually a fairly tidy design, I think people are going to be really happy with it. One of the interesting things that they also highlighted is the glove box is quite a bit larger now, and it's actually big enough to hold a 10-inch iPad.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's I think the things that you're going to have to discover when you drive it. So I was a little disappointed that they unveiled it and yet they didn't let anybody drive it, because it does look like the human factors, the HMI have been really upgraded in this version of the Escape, where it was so many buttons, and it was like a mid 2000s European Ford in the one that we have now. So it had like the phone keypad and stuff, and just a lot of funkiness in there. And I liked the first generation Escape, or I guess the first 2 generations, right? The original, and then when they made it a little more squared off. Those 2 were so charming.
Yes.
And then they came out with the one that we have now, and I was just like, ew. I can't get comfortable in it. It's crappy to see out of. It's also kind of crappy dynamically. I just not a thing I like. So hopefully they do better with all of those points. Dynamically it sounds like it's going to be pretty good, especially with that small turbo triple, which
it's 180 horsepower with the 1.5.
That's a lot of power from an engine 1.5 is not really all that small of an engine, but I want to know what the character that is, because I really, really like. It's funny. I like 3-cylinder engines. I really like the mini triple that's exactly the same size. And
right. Well, the 1-liter EcoBoost that they've had in the Focus and Fiesta for a few years now is also a 3-cylinder.
That's
right. That's a fantastic little engine.
I liked that a lot when I had that. I had that car. I think I had a Fiesta with it. Oh gosh, 5 or 6 years ago. It was a long time. At least it was back in like 2014, something like that. So, but yeah, 1.5 liters is a little big for just 3 cylinders, but I'm sure they figured out how to manage the vibrations and stuff, and I'm sure it's really
it
good.
has a balance shaft.
Yeah, so that helps. This is probably one of the most important vehicles for Ford, right? This is their number 2 seller.
Yeah, number 2 behind the F-Series.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's crucial for Ford to get this one right. Because this is a very competitive segment. I mean, there's a lot of really good vehicles in this segment, including obviously the CX-5, but you've got the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Nissan Rogue, the Jeep Compass, and the Cherokee, which kind of split this segment for Jeep. And then also what else?
The Buick Encore,
the Equinox. Yeah. Well, the Encore is like
it's a little small, right?
Down. Yeah.
But no, there's a lot of competition.
What's the one that was it the Envision?
The Envision.
Buick. Mm-hmm.
It's funny you guys mentioned the Equinox. I was thinking the other day as it passed me. It's just a Terrain. First generation Terrain, and I don't know if there's a car on the road that has aged more poorly.
I didn't think the first generation Terrain was a good design when it was fresh.
It's definitely not now.
One other interesting design detail that I noticed on this, and I was talking to Joel Piaskowski about this, was the rear bumper.
Oh yeah.
The previous generation Escape, they kind of integrated it all in, so the bumper, you didn't really have a separate step at the back. It all just kind of flowed together, and at the bottom section of the tailgate there was actually a plastic filler panel that basically filled that gap. So essentially it kind of looked like there was no separate bumper there. And I asked him why they went back to this setup for this one, and the thing that he explained is that having it separate, and especially having it, in a dark color, the way they have it on, at least on all the vehicles, all the different variants that we saw last week, is that it kind of fades into the background, and it actually creates a visual impression of less rear overhang. And when you look at the current Escape side by side with this one, they actually have roughly the same total overhang at the back. But it actually does, it creates this optical illusion that it's shorter than it is.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised, actually, to look at the numbers and see that this new Escape is not much longer than the old Escape, but it certainly looks much better balanced in terms of proportion.
Yeah, it's only about 2 inches longer overall. But yeah, it does have much better proportions. They kind of moved the A-pillars and the windshield back a little bit. So it's got a little bit more of the cab rearward proportion to it. But it's got more interior volume. It's about an inch lower than before, but it's also a little bit, about an inch or so wider. So the whole thing is because they're targeting this one more at where the heart of the market is really, the urban dwellers or even suburban dwellers that aren't going to go off-roading with this thing. They're using it more like you would use a car, and then they're going to have this other model that's going to be, more the sportier, more off-road oriented variant that is going to have a completely different design.
I think it looks great. I really like the back end of it a lot. And, it reminds me of just what Ford's strategy is. Sam, when you were talking about not going off-road, using it as a car, people are going to look at this and think it's a car. And the definition of a car is so much broader now than it was years ago. And Ford's gotten such bad press about not building cars anymore. Well, they're building the kind of cars that people want because people will think of this as a car. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
I think I think it looks really great. I hope I get the chance to drive it. I've gotten invited to a couple of Lincoln things, but I don't think I've ever gotten invited to a Ford event. But it looks great. I think it's what people want. And you're right about the belt line. I mean, there's a lot more glass in this version, but they've done it in such a way that it doesn't compromise the looks of the vehicle. I mean, it still looks like it has some high shoulders and a high haunch set. So it looks like it looks really nice. I mean, I think I can't wait to see it in person.
Yeah, no, I think they've done a great job, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. It goes on sale this fall. No details on pricing or specifics on fuel economy or anything like that yet until much closer. But it'll probably be priced pretty similar to the current one, and it should definitely get better fuel economy with these new engines, and certainly with the hybrid and the plug-in hybrid versions. And then in a couple of weeks in New York, we'll see the Corsair as well, which is the Lincoln based off the same platform.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Where is this built?
In Louisville.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the side proportions of it are really nice. I mean, the more I look at it, the more attractive it becomes. And I'll have to. I should have.
I get that a lot.
I'll reserve judgment on the interior.
I am curious about that rear bumper. I'm trying to think. The hatch on the outgoing Escape opens. Right down pretty low, right? So lift over
actually
easy?
It opens to about the same height.
Okay.
But it's just that the way the hatch is shaped on the current one, it kind of flares out a little bit more at the bottom. So this one, when you look at it in profile, there's the cut line where the tail lights are. It then kind of folds forward just a touch. So it kind of visually shortens that rear overhang a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas the current one kind of goes more straight down and kind of flares out just a little bit at the bottom, to meet the trailing edge of the bumper at the same point. So the bumper doesn't stand out. But the way they've done it here, the bumper almost kind of disappears into the background most of the time when you look at it.
Gotcha. That's trickery. I like it.
Yeah.
Fool in the eye. All right. Well, the last thing that we have on the list, which was kind of a shock to hear about today, is the Audi e-tron is not going to go that far. Although I don't know if this is actually an issue, like a practical issue. It's certainly a problem for Audi to market around. But the e-tron, its official range is 204 miles.
Yeah, that's what they announced today, which is kind of disappointing. When you compare it, against the Tesla Model S or Model X, which are all they currently range from like 250 to 270. The last. They no longer sell the Model X with the 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, but even that one was like 237 mile range, I think. And the e-tron has a 95 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is almost the same size as what's in the Teslas now, but it's only getting 204 miles, which is kind of disappointing. They've apparently taken a fairly conservative approach with how they're managing the battery. They're not using the full capacity of it. They're only using apparently 88% of the capacity. So, and nobody ever uses the full capacity of the batteries anyway, because you never want to fully charge it, because then you run the risk of overcharging it and actually damaging it. But they're only using 83 kilowatt hours of what's in there. But still, even with that, like I said, the 75 kilowatt hour Tesla Model X that they used to sell had 32 more miles of range than this does, so it's not great.
Yeah, that's really. I mean, when I drove it back in December, the estimate was for 259.
Yeah, that's under the WLTP, the World Light Duty Test Protocol that they're starting to use in Europe.
Okay,
and the EPA test procedures are still give you shorter numbers than that. The same thing applies to the Jaguar I-Pace. The Jag I-Pace, is like 270 on WLTP and 236 here.
So they told us, because this is what I had written in my article, I said the EPA hasn't released the exact range because we had driven the German spec version, and it says it should deliver about 200 to 210 miles. So it's right in line with what they had told us back in December. But
right, and they kind of hinted at that last October as well when they unveiled it in San Francisco. But it's still, it's a bit disappointing. But aside from that, everything else about this thing, still looks very impressive, and I'm looking forward to driving it next month in California.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just the thing I loved the most about it was that it was just so normal. So I'll look forward to talking to you about it, because I'll look forward to seeing if you had the same kind of feelings as I did.
Well, and it's interesting to think about how that range, it's a number, and we can play the numbers comparison game. But in the real world, I don't know how much that's going to actually matter.
It probably won't to most people, because, I think, 200 miles is really kind of the sweet spot for EVs. As long as you've got over 200 miles of nominal range, that's going to handle pretty much anything anybody ever needs to do, aside from, transcontinental drives, or long distance drives.
Yeah.
And for that, it has support for 150 kilowatt hour or 150 kilowatt charging, which is a little bit faster than what the current big Teslas do. They're limited to 120. And Electrify America is, building out their network. They're up to about, I think, 150 stations now, and by the fall they'll be up to almost 500 stations across the country, and almost 2,000 over the next couple of years. So, and then, others, ChargePoint and EVgo and others are also putting in more and more DC fast chargers. So, it shouldn't really be a problem.
Yeah. And to me, it just drove like such a normal car. And it looks great. I mean, I love the size of it. It's bigger than the Q5. I actually really wish they had named it the Q6, because it slots right in there. And I think it would have.
Well, and that's what some of the early rumors were, is that it would be, called a Q6 or a Q6 e-tron.
Yeah, because it slots right in between, and it also reinforces that this is just a normal car that happens to be electric. And that's right. What I would like to see us move towards.
Yeah, and last fall, when at the big reveal event in San Francisco, that was the message. When I talked to the Audi people, they said, they weren't really specifically targeting Tesla with this thing. They weren't really targeting the Model X or the S with this thing. They were the customers they were targeting are Audi customers, not Tesla customers.
Yes,
they wanted to get people that want an Audi but wanted to be electric.
Right.
And, from everything we've seen so far of this thing, I think that's, they'll probably succeed at that.
I think so too. I mean, I think so too.
I do want to know how much the range drops off in the cold weather, whether you wind up with, 150 or 120 miles of range in the winter.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sorry.
It'll probably be closer to 150 or so, because they do have a heat pump HVAC system in there, which is more efficient than the older resistive heating systems, so it should do better than it shouldn't degrade as much as some EVs do.
And we had more than enough range in Abu Dhabi, where it was probably in the high 80s. It wasn't particularly hot, but the range was not a problem at all when we were in the desert, so it was cool.
The more EVs, the better. And this is a sucky thing for them to have to, and that's the official term. That's the technical word, is sucky. It's going to be a challenge for them to manage the criticism of it. But I also think that maybe we're focused on this number a little more than any of the actual buyers are going to be. And like you said, Sam, it's going to be Audi buyers that now have an electric option, and other premium EV buyers are going to be able to choose the Audi. You know, it's gonna meet with their approval on a lot of levels, and you know, one of them being like it's a car you can get. It has service locations. It works with the charging network that is getting built out.
And when you need service, you know, they will actually probably be able to get you parts.
Yeah, and you know, so and obviously we're sort of skirting some of the Tesla issues, but also, you know, there's a lot of other EV startups as well, and they all, you know, it's one thing to be able to bring a concept or even one model to market, but you know, something that automakers are really, really good at is the sales, and it's not really automakers, it's the dealerships. They're really good at sales and service. They know which parts to stock. They have the logistics down, and you know, that whole supply chain, and just making sure that customers can be taken care of reasonably. That's really going to make or break any of the newer EV companies, and it's certainly something that the existing car makers have an edge on. And I don't know that we give them enough credit for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you know, certainly, you know, over the years, you know, dealers have gotten a well-deserved reputation in many cases. You know, they've earned the name stealership instead of dealership. You know, and you know, the whole process of buying a car from a dealer, you know, can be, you know, fraught with pain and anxiety. You know, I will not deny that, but you know, when you compare it, you know, to, you know, you look at Tesla, you know, as the counter example to that. You know, even though they do their sales online, you know, if you can't you know, you still at some point you have to deliver a physical product, and you know, if you can't do that in a reasonable and reliable way, you know, have the car ready, you know, when you promise it to the customer, not call them an hour before saying, oh, you know, sorry, you know, that car's not available, you know, we'll reschedule, you know, next week or the week after, or, you know, or, you know, if they need service, you know, if you know, get into a fender bender and you need parts or something breaks, you know, being able to get those parts promptly and get the car fixed and back on the road instead of, you know, sitting in the shop for 2 months, you know, those are things that, you know, for all we complain about dealers, they actually usually execute on that stuff pretty well.
Yeah. So there you go. Audi e-tron, it'll have 200 miles of range, but don't worry, because you'll be able to get one, and if it breaks, you'll be able to get it fixed.
Exactly.
All right.
So I actually also went on a media drive. I was on for the 2020 Jeep Gladiator.
Oh, the Gladiator.
Yeah. How was that?
It was a lot of fun. I got to tell you, it was very well behaved on the road. It was surprisingly quiet. We deliberately chose the cloth top to see how loud it was. And our Voss, who's such a great guy, was my driving partner. And we were really both very impressed with the noise, vibration, and harshness. The NVH on the vehicle was really, really good. And then off-road, we had the Rubicon, which is really the most capable off-road. And that thing was a beast. I mean, there were times somebody else was there and she came back and said, have you gone out on the off-road course? And I said, no, not yet. And she goes, well, you'll know when I thought I was going to use every swear word in the book. And she wasn't kidding. I came back, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, we just went straight down, and we didn't use the hill descent control that it kind of lets, the automatic one that lets the vehicle pick through the path. Like, we were in charge of it. And at one point you're just sliding, and it was so muddy because it had rained the day before. So
perfect.
It was absolutely perfect. I mean, the trucks were a mess. They were a mess. It was so much fun. And it was really, really good. And I love the fact that it's just filled with old world charm, but with all the latest technology. So, you know, you can remove the doors, and they actually have the door handle inside is positioned in such a way that you can actually carry it easier. So you put the door underneath your arm, and you tuck your hand inside the window, and you can carry the door away easier. It makes it easier to put it away. And
those doors are surprisingly lightweight.
Right,
too.
exactly. And then, of course, you can take the whole roof off as well. And you could put the windshield down, too. And these are all just fun things that really no other car can do. But then at the same time, they have all this type of terrific technology in it. So we drove several different versions of it, but they had heated seats, heated steering wheel, cooled seats, just all the kind of creature comforts that you would want. But then you can do, like in the Rubicon, it has this rock track 4x4 system that just, you could just go foraging through anything, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. So I would definitely encourage people that are looking at the Tacoma to also look at the Gladiator. And certainly if you're looking at the Wrangler too, the Gladiator I think will just be something that not everyone's going to have, but that provides a ton of terrific utility. They also have a lot of really good accessories through Mopar, so I was impressed with that too. They have some good utility. There's drawers that you can put on. There's bike racks and all sorts of stuff. There's actually door bars that I was thinking of for people with little kids that you can put the door bars on. So you take the doors off, and then you can still have these bars on and just be a little bit safer. But it was great. It was a lot of fun.
That's just a big, long truck.
It is a long truck. The bed is 5 feet long, but it doesn't drive at all like that.
Yeah, that's what everybody was saying. And honestly, I think it's probably the right decision for Jeep, because the Unlimited sells so much better than the two-door Wrangler.
Sure.
And so, we've seen that crew cab pickups have kind of taken the place of the old regular cabs,
yes,
where they're just that much more popular. So it's probably a smart decision.
They showed the first Gladiator, the modern day Gladiator, I should say. They showed in 2005 at the Chicago Auto Show. So it's been 14 years in the making to come out. And obviously the company's gone through all sorts of things and recessions and, change in ownership and all these different things.
They had a few issues.
Yeah, they had a few issues along the way. Exactly. So the base MSRP for the base Sport is $33,545. I tested an Overland, which was, I believe, in the 39s.
That's not as bad as I thought it would be.
It wasn't as bad. And then I drove the Overland to the off-road location, and then I drove the Sport S at 36,000. Just 36,745. It was, again, nicely equipped. I don't think ours had nav in it, but so it was a little bit more stripped down. And then the Rubicon goes for 43,000. But I was actually surprised because I think my brother's Jeep was in the 50s. So
yeah, none of those prices seem offensively high to me.
I know
the Wrangler is expensive, but certainly you can get a Tacoma in the 30s.
Yeah,
I think the Wrangler Unlimited Sahara that I drove last summer was like 52 or 53.
Yeah, something like that, right? And of course, there's a manual transmission, which is loads of fun too.
But that's the perfect Jeep for me, a perfect Wrangler is like a two-door Sport with no options and a manual. Like or maybe the hardtop. I do like the hardtop, but they don't need to be as luxuriously equipped as they generally are. And I think it's amazing on the JLs that they've packed that kind of equipment and refinement into them and still maintained that essence of Wrangler. And, everybody's been screaming for a Wrangler pickup for, more than a decade, clearly.
Yes, exactly. The other thing they did was that the rear seat is a 60-40 split, which is really nice, so that you can put like a surfboard in there. You can put a long piece of wood. So it just has a nice practicality. There was a lot of what I called emotional solutions in there, where it was just simple. Just, even I didn't have any problem getting in and out of it. Even the Rubicon, when it was fully mudded, like fully muddy, and I thought, oh my gosh, my pants are just the whole back of them. But no, they were really fine. And so it just, even the ingress and egress was easier than I expected. So overall, it was just loads of fun. I mean, I would buy practically every car that I test drive, and this would definitely be one of them. It was great.
Yeah, all right. We'll have to get them in the fleet as well. You guys
I hope
drive
so.
all the cool stuff while I toilet in an office.
We work hard.
Yeah.
For our listening audience.
I do. I don't drive as much as you guys. So, but yeah, all right. Well, I think that's a solid podcast, guys. We're coming up on an hour and a half, so it doesn't look like we had any questions or anything like that. But people know where to find us.
Yeah, and I'm still working on trying to line up somebody with some expertise in the area of headlights to answer a question that we did have last week on Twitter. So we're bringing somebody in to talk about that. Let's see what else. If you like the show, throw us a rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to. You can find the show everywhere, on all the platforms, except for some reason I still can't get it to work properly on Google Podcasts. I'm working on that.
It's probably all our smack talk.
No, it's actually it's a different technical problem, but everything else works fine. There's also a link to a survey on the website on wheelbearings.media if you want to take a couple of minutes and just share a little demographic information. We try to figure out if we can find a way to get somebody to sponsor this thing. Yeah,
just send money. 10s and 20s. According to, is that Sally Brown?
Small. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, small unmarked bills, please.
All right, we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks.
All right,
good
bye.
night.